France, 1945. 6 German Panzer tanks roar toward American lines, followed by 250 elite soldiers. Young Lieutenant Audie Murphy has only 40 exhausted and wounded men. The order is clear: retreat or die. But Murphy sees something no one else sees: a burning, destructive tank with a still-functioning 50 caliber machine gun. Everyone expects him to die in 5 minutes. But what this 5'4" farm boy did atop that burning tank changed the fate of a crucial battle. This is the true story of Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier in American history, and the day he defied all odds and showed the world the true meaning of courage. June 20th, 1925. A small log cabin in Kingston, Texas. Emmett and Josie Murphy had just given birth to the 7th of their 12 children. They named him Audie Leon Murphy. The Murphy family were sharecroppers, working in cotton fields that did not belong to them, receiving only a fraction of what they harvested. They lived in abject poverty. Their homes were rustic structures of 3 or 4 rooms, without plumbing or electricity. They cooked on wood-burning stoves. A fireplace provided heating. The Murphy family's daily diet was monotonous: biscuits, cornbread, and molasses with milk and gravy. Occasionally, pork, fish, and game, often hunted by young Audie, provided some variety. From childhood, Audie was different. He was quiet, introspective, with an explosive temper that surfaced in moments of stress. His friends would later describe a boy who spent long hours alone, thinking, observing. When Audie was about 5 years old, her father Emmett began disappearing for days, sometimes weeks. He drank and had anger issues. The family never knew when he would return or what state he would be in. Then, in 1936, when Audie was only 11 years old, Emmett Murphy simply disappeared. He left one morning and never returned. He completely abandoned his wife and 12 children. Josie Murphy tried to keep the family together, but it was nearly impossible. The older children had already left home. Audie, still a child, suddenly found himself responsible for helping to care for his younger siblings. In the spring of 1933, the family moved to Celeste so the children could attend school. For the first few months, they lived in a converted train car on the southern edge of town, not far from the Katy Railroad tracks. Audie attended primary school in Celeste, but his formal education was short-lived. In the 5th grade, he dropped out of school. Not by choice, but out of necessity. His family needed money to survive. At 10 years old, Audie was working in cotton fields for $1 a day. He plowed, he harvested, he did any farm work anyone hired him to do. They were long days under the scorching Texas sun, work that would break many adults, let alone a child. But it was another skill that Audie developed that really helped feed his family: hunting. From a young age, Audie had a natural affinity for rifles. He learned to shoot with an old shotgun that his family owned. His first weapon was a homemade slingshot, which he used to shoot squirrels and rabbits. His friend and neighbor Dial Henley often hunted with Audie. Henley would later recall, Audie never missed his shot. When Henley mentioned this to Murphy, the young man simply replied, "Well, Dial, if I don't hit my target, my family won't eat today." It wasn't a sport. It was survival. Every bullet counted. Audie learned to judge distances with incredible accuracy. He learned to control his breathing. He learned to pull the trigger smoothly. These skills, developed out of desperate necessity, would later save his life and the lives of dozens of other soldiers. In 1941, when Audie was only 15 years old, tragedy struck again. Her mother, Josie, the glue that held the family together, fell ill. Without money for proper medical treatment, she wasted away. On May 23, 1941, Josie Belle Murphy died. Audie was devastated. He was only 15 years old and now an orphan, his mother gone. His three younger siblings, Nadine, Billy, and Joe, were placed in an orphanage. Audie promised himself that one day he would get them back and take proper care of them. It was a promise he would keep. Audie got a job at a general store combined with a garage and gas station in Greenville, Texas. Later, he worked in a radio repair shop for $16 a week. They were honest jobs, but Audie felt he had a greater purpose waiting for him. Then, on December 7, 1941, everything changed. Pearl Harbor was attacked. America entered the war. Audie Murphy was only 16 years old, but she knew exactly what she needed to do. The days following the attack on Pearl Harbor saw a wave of patriotism sweep across the United States. Young men from every city, town, and farm rushed to enlist. Audie Murphy was among them. There was just one problem. Audie was only 16. The minimum age for military service was 18, but Audie was determined. He had lost his mother, his siblings were in an orphanage, and he had nothing tying him to Texas. The war offered purpose, perhaps even a chance to do something meaningful with his life. Audie first tried to enlist in the Marines. He entered the recruiting office confidently, ready to serve his country. The recruit looked at the frail young man before him. Audie was only 1.65 meters tall and weighed 50 kilos. He looked like a strong breeze could knock him over. "Kid, you don't even look 16, the recruit said. "The Marines need men, not kids. Next." Rejected. Audie didn't give up. He tried the Navy. Surely they would accept him, but the result was the same. Too short, too skinny, too young. Rejected again. Desperate, Audie tried the Army paratroopers. He had heard stories about soldiers jumping from planes behind enemy lines. It sounded exciting, heroic. But the paratroopers had even more rigorous physical requirements than the Marines. Audie was rejected for the third time. Most boys would have given up. But Audie Murphy wasn't like most boys. Poverty had taught him perseverance. His mother's death had taught him that life was too short to give up on his dreams. He waited. He continued working in the radio workshop. He saved every penny he could, and on his 17th birthday, June 20th, 1942, Audie tried again. This time he went to the United States Army, and this time he had a trump card. His older sister, Corinne Burns, agreed to provide false testimony stating that Audie was 18 years old. The recruit looked at the frail young man again. Even with the correct age on paper, Audie barely met the minimum physical requirements. The recruit hesitated, but there was a war going on, and the Army needed men. "Very well, son," he finally said. "Welcome to the United States Army." Audie was accepted and assigned to basic training at Camp Walters, Texas, not far from his home. The training would be brutal for any recruit, but especially for someone of Audie's size and weight. In the training camp, Audie quickly stood out, but not in the way he wanted. Other recruits mocked his short stature. Training sergeants questioned whether he should even be there. His company commander, worried that Audie wouldn't survive infantry combat, tried to assign him to the cooking and baking school. "Murphy, you'd be better off in the kitchen," the officer suggested. Audie protested vehemently. "Sir, I didn't enlist to cook. I enlisted to fight." Later, at Fort Meade, Maryland, another commander tried to get Audie to work permanently at the trading post, selling shoes and socks to other soldiers. Again, Audie refused. "I came here to fight, not to sell shoes," he insisted. There was something about that skinny young man from Texas, a determination, an intensity, that couldn't be denied. Eventually, his superiors stopped trying to protect him and let him go his own way. During basic training, Audie's natural abilities with rifles became obvious. On the shooting range, he consistently outperformed larger and more experienced recruits. His hands were steady. His aim was precise. He could hit targets that other recruits couldn't even see properly. An officer observed, Murphy may not look like much, but that kid can shoot. There was also a popular game among soldiers outside Fort Meade, a shooting gallery with a particularly difficult target, a playing card with 5 6mm red dots, one in each corner and one in the center. Soldiers tried to hit all 5 points. Few succeeded. Audie Murphy consistently hit all 5 points, not just once, but repeatedly. It was almost supernatural. After completing basic training, Audie was assigned to a replacement battalion and sent to North Africa in early 1943. The real war was about to begin, but not even Audie Murphy could have imagined what the next 2 years would bring. Audie arrived in North Africa in February 1943, assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division, 15th Infantry Regiment, Company B. His first assignment was disappointing, guarding German prisoners of war. Audie hadn't crossed the ocean to be a guard. He wanted action. He wanted to fight. But orders were orders, and he carried out his duty, even if dissatisfied. The wait didn't last long. In July 1943, the 3rd Infantry Division participated in the invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky. Audie would finally see real combat. The landing was relatively uneventful, but as Audie and his unit moved inland, they encountered their first battlefield. The sight shocked even the hardened young Texan. There were dead bodies everywhere, Audie would later recall. I had never seen anything like it before. It was incredible and horrible. Dead soldiers from both sides were scattered across the terrain. Some had been dead for only hours, still in positions that suggested their last actions. Others were swollen from the Sicilian heat. The smell was unbearable. Audie felt his stomach churn. Several recruits vomited. This was the true face of war. Not the glory of the recruitment posters, but the brutal, bloody ugliness of mass death. But Audie didn't have time to process the trauma. His unit was moving forward, and he had to keep up. During the fighting in Sicily, Audie showed his first flashes of exceptional skill. He was calm under fire. While other recruits panicked or froze, Audie simply did his job. He shot at the targets he saw. He followed orders. He kept his head down. An officer noted, "Murphy doesn't say much, but when the bullets start flying, he's as cold as ice." The Sicilian campaign was brutal, but the 3rd Division eventually helped secure the island. Audie had survived his first major battle, but the war was only beginning. In September 1943, the 3rd Division participated in the invasion of mainland Italy. It was here that Audie Murphy truly began to distinguish himself. During the fighting for the Salerno beachhead, Audie was promoted to corporal, not because of politics or favoritism, but because he demonstrated natural leadership and exceptional courage under fire. The division advanced slowly through Italy, encountering fierce German resistance. The mountainous terrain favored the defenders. Each hill, each valley was a separate battle. In January 1944, the 3rd Division participated in the landings at Anzio, establishing a dangerous beachhead behind German lines. The Anzio beachhead became a slaughterhouse. Allied soldiers were trapped in a small area, constantly bombarded by German artillery. Audie was hospitalized with malaria, missing the initial landing. When he returned, he was promoted to platoon sergeant in Company B after the First Battle of Cisterna. It was in Anzio that Audie received his first combat decoration. On March 2nd, he and his platoon took shelter from the storm in an abandoned farmhouse. A German tank passed nearby. Most of the soldiers would have remained hidden. But Audie saw an opportunity. He and his men killed the tank crew. Then Audie crawled alone close enough to destroy the tank with rifle grenades. He received the Bronze Star with V symbol for this action. During the next few months in Anzio, Audie continued conducting reconnaissance patrols to capture German prisoners. He developed a reputation, small in stature, but a giant in courage. In August 1944, the 3rd Division participated in Operation Dragoon, the invasion of southern France near Ramatuelle. It was here that Audie carried out the action that earned him the Distinguished Service Cross. His unit was advancing inland when it was halted by intense German machine gun fire. Men were falling all around Audie. The unit was paralyzed. Audie didn't wait for orders. He advanced alone toward the German machine gun nests. Crawling, running, shooting, he eliminated several enemy nests. Then he captured 5 German soldiers. His courage inspired his unit to advance again. The advance continued. Audie was promoted to second lieutenant, a battlefield commission, the highest honor an enlisted soldier could receive. He was now an officer, responsible for leading men in combat. But Audie Murphy's greatest test was yet to come. And it would take place in a place called Holtzwihr, in the Colmar Pocket region of France. January 1945. The war in Europe was drawing to a close, but the Germans were still fighting fiercely. The Colmar Pocket was a 2,200 square kilometer area in the Vosges Mountains that had been held by German troops since November 1944. The pocket represented a significant danger to the Allied advance in Germany. If the Nazis attacked, they could rout the overburdened 7th Army and then strike the 3rd Army advancing from the rear, potentially destroying it as well. From there, the Wehrmacht could retake the port of Antwerp and push the Allies back into the English Channel. The Allies could not simply surround and ignore such a powerful enemy force. Something had to be done. Lieutenant General Jacob Devers ordered the 3rd Division, reinforced by the 28th Infantry Division, to eliminate the pocket. The 3rd Division engaged in 16 days of battle to secure the bridgeheads west of the Rhine on the Colmar Canal. Audie Murphy was commanding Company B of the 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment. He had returned from a period of hospitalization and was now back in combat. On January 23rd, the 30th Regiment of the 3rd Division captured the woods of Bois de Riedveer and reached the outskirts of Holtzwihr and Riedveer, where they encountered 10 enemy tanks and tank destroyers, accompanied by at least 100 infantry soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Keith Ware, executive officer of the 15th Regiment, later explained how essential securing the forest was. Its possession was of cardinal importance, as the woods dominated the German stronghold of Holtzwihr, whose reduction was essential for the rapid accomplishment of the 3rd Division's offensive tasks. Audie's B Company received orders to advance through the Riedveer woods and take up positions near Holtzwihr. It was a dangerous task. On January 24th, Company B moved through the frozen forest. Deep snow covered the ground. The temperature was well below freezing. The men shivered as they advanced. During the advance, the company faced heavy German counterattacks. January 25th was particularly brutal. All the officers of Company B, except Audie Murphy, became casualties. Audie assumed command of the company. He was only 19 years old and was now responsible for over 100 men, although with casualties, the company was reduced to just 2 officers and 28 enlisted men. Audie would later recall, "Our armor advances ahead of us with gun barrels piercing through it. From the forest comes a roar of projectiles. 2 of the tanks explode in flames. Their escape hatches open and the still living crew members emerge. Burning like torches and screaming horribly, they roll in the snow." Despite this horrific setback, the advance continued, with Murphy leading his company forward against stiff opposition. As we advanced, the fighting developed into individual duels, he continued. Once I was pinned down behind a tree by a stubborn German using a huge pine tree for cover. Audie received 5 replacements and was instructed to advance with cover being provided by 2 tank destroyers. The weather was terrible with heavy snowfalls. On the night of January 25th, the company dug defensive positions on the edge of the forest. From their position, they could clearly see the heavily defended village of Holtzwihr across the rolling, snow-covered fields. One of the tank destroyers got stuck in a ditch. Audie positioned the other, an M10, along a narrow dirt road that ran deep into the forest. He knew that the German armor would have to advance along that road. Audie called back to the 1st Battalion headquarters for last-minute instructions. He was informed that the 2nd Battalion, 30th Regiment, had not yet arrived to reinforce his company. "Hold your position," were his orders. Audie looked at his exhausted and wounded men. He looked at the fortified German village ahead, and he waited. He didn't know he was about to fight the battle that would make him a legend. January 26, 1945, early afternoon. Company B was scattered in a weak defensive position on the edge of the forest. 40 exhausted men against a village full of elite German soldiers and armor. Company B was positioned in a horseshoe shape, with 2 large tree fingers forming the sides. The fortified village of Holzwehr was in full view over the rolling, snow-covered fields. The 2 tank destroyers were positioned along the narrow dirt road. Audie Murphy knew the Germans would attack. It was only a matter of when. Around 2 in the afternoon, Audie saw movement coming from Holzwehr. His heart sank. 6 Panzer tanks and approximately 250 infantry soldiers dressed in white snow camouflage suits began advancing toward their position, preceded by an artillery barrage. From my low forward position, I saw the counterattack forming with 6 tanks and about 250-foot soldiers dressed in white, Murphy recalled. So it would have been impossible to spot them earlier or further than a mile. The soldiers belonged to the German 2nd Mountain Division, which had been transferred to the Kolmar region of Norway. They were experienced and fierce troops. Audie ran to the field telephone and called the artillery officer at battalion headquarters and arranged for the 2nd Battalion to fire supporting artillery. I had barely given the order to fire when all hell broke loose. The Germans had already begun their preliminary barrage. German projectiles rained down on Company B's position. Explosions shook the earth. Metal shrapnel whistled through the air. Men threw themselves to the ground, searching for any cover they could find. Private First Class Donald Ekman recalled, "You could see the pennants on the antennas of the German tanks. That caught our attention immediately. We also saw a huge sea of white infantry coming towards us." Audie quickly assessed the situation. His company could not withstand this attack. They would be annihilated. "Men, retreat to the prepared positions in the forest," Audie ordered. "Move! Move!" His company began to retreat in an organized fashion to deeper defensive positions in the forest. Audie remained in his forward position with his field telephone, directing artillery fire and covering his men's retreat with his M1 carbine. Then a German projectile scored a direct hit on one of the M10 tank destroyers. The explosion set the vehicle ablaze, and its crew was forced to abandon it. Flames licked the tank's hull. Ammunition and fuel inside could explode at any moment. The other tank destroyer began to retreat to the safety of the forest with the rest of the company. Audie Murphy was now completely alone in open field. Ahead of him, 6 Panzer tanks and 250 German mountain soldiers advanced. Behind him, his men retreated to positions in the forest. He had 2 rifles, his M1 carbine and an M1 Garand rifle he had acquired, and a field telephone. That was all. The German infantry was getting closer, 100 meters, 80, 60. Audie shot at everything that moved. He took down several Germans, but they kept coming. There were simply too many of them. Then Audie looked at the burning tank destroyer. The 50 caliber machine gun in the turret was still intact. The tank was burning. Ammunition inside could explode at any second, but that machine gun, everyone expected him to die in 5 minutes on top of that tank. But Audie Murphy never did what was expected of him. He ran towards the burning tank. Audie Murphy climbed into the burning M10 tank destroyer. The heat was intense. He could feel it through his boots. The metal was so hot it burned to the touch. Inside the hull, ammunition and fuel burned. At any moment, the entire tank could explode, instantly vaporizing Audie. But he positioned himself behind the 50 caliber Browning M2 machine gun in the turret and opened fire. The sound was deafening. The 50 caliber machine gun roared to life, firing projectiles the size of human fingers at a rate of 500 to 600 rounds per minute. The nearest German infantry was caught completely by surprise. They had seen the tank destroyer get hit and catch fire. They assumed it was out of action. Now, suddenly, it was firing at them. Audie swept his machine gun through the advancing infantry lines. German soldiers fell. Some threw themselves into nearby ditches, seeking cover. An entire squad was crawling through a ditch toward Audie's position. He turned his machine gun toward them and fired. The entire squad was wiped out. The German tanks now concentrated their fire on the burning tank destroyer. Tank cannon shells and machine gun fire rained down on Audie's position. Bullets ricocheted off the metal around him. Shrapnel whistled past his head. But the shimmering smoke from the burning tank, combined with the constant roar of battle, made it difficult for the Germans to detect exactly where the machine gun fire was coming from. With all the gunfire and large projectiles exploding everywhere, they probably didn't even hear my machine gun fire, much less guess its point of origin, Audie would later recall. Sergeant Elmer Brawley, who witnessed the fighting from the edge of the forest, later said, "The German infantry came within 10 meters of Lieutenant Murphy, who killed them in the ravines, in the meadows, in the woods, wherever he saw them." Audie wasn't just firing blindly. He was carefully choosing his targets, using all the skills he'd learned hunting rabbits in Texas. Every burst counted. Every burst brought down Germans. And all the while, he was still using the field phone to direct American artillery fire on the most distant German formations. With one hand on the machine gun and the phone strapped between his shoulder and ear, Audie coordinated supporting fire while fighting. "Adjust your fire 20 meters to the left," he shouted into the phone. Then he would return to the machine gun, firing at German soldiers who were getting closer and closer. The situation was absurd. A man alone in a burning tank, fighting against 6 tanks and 250 soldiers. By the laws of military logic, Audie should have died within the first few minutes. But he didn't die. He fought. 10 minutes passed, 20, 30. The Germans tried to flank Audie's position. He shot them down. They tried to advance directly. He swept them away with his machine gun and they retreated. The Panzer tanks continued firing, but they couldn't hit Audie without risking hitting their own infantry, who were too close to the burning tank destroyer. 40 minutes, 50. Audie's legs were burning, literally. The hot metal of the tank was cauterizing through his boots, but he ignored the pain. Then, about an hour after the fight began, Audie felt something warm on his leg. He looked down and saw blood. He had been hit by shrapnel, but he didn't stop shooting. Finally, after more than an hour atop that burning tank, the 50 caliber machine gun clicked empty. Audie had fired every available belt of ammunition. The German tanks, demoralized by the fierce resistance and heavy casualties inflicted by American artillery and Audie's machine gun fire, began to retreat towards Holzwihr. The German infantry, lacking tank support, also retreated. Audie Murphy had stopped an attack by 6 tanks and 250 men, single-handedly. Audie climbed down from the burning tank destroyer just moments before it finally exploded. The blast shook the ground, sending twisted pieces of metal flying in all directions. He limped heavily. His injured leg was bleeding. His boots were burned. His face was covered in soot and blood. But he was alive. Audie looked at his men hidden in the forest. Then he looked at the retreating Germans. This was the moment. The Germans were disorganized, demoralized. If Company B counterattacked now, they could push them completely back. "Company B, advance!" Audie shouted, gesturing for his men to come out of the woods. His soldiers, who had witnessed their commander's impossible stand, were inspired. If Murphy could stand alone in a burning tank against an army, surely they could advance now. Company B emerged from the forest, firing as they advanced. The Germans, already in retreat and shocked by the heavy casualties, continued to fall back. Audie led the counterattack even though he was wounded. He limped but didn't slow down. With his M1 carbine in hand, he shot at any German he saw. The counterattack was successful. The Germans were pushed back towards Holzwihr. The forest was secure. Only then, with the battle won, did Audie finally allow his men to examine their wounds. Sergeant Brawley and other soldiers rushed to him. "Lieutenant, you're injured. You need medical treatment." Audie shook his head. "Take care of the other men first. They're worse off than me." Audie insisted on remaining with his men while his wounds were treated in the field. He refused to be evacuated until he was sure that all the other wounded had been cared for. That night, while the company rested, the men gathered around Audie. Private Kruger would later recall, "We were right next to the Colmar Canal. After that bloody day was over, we went down to the canal to drink water. The bodies were so thick that you had to push them aside to get water. It was a grim reminder of the cost of that day's victory." Audie remained quiet, as always. He never boasted. He never sought attention. But his men knew what they had witnessed. Colonel William Bartlett, who served with Murphy, later said, "Audie wasn't looking for medals. He just kept doing his job, pushing the fight forward, hour after hour. Estimates varied, but it is believed that Audie killed or wounded about 50 Germans during that hour atop the burning tank. His machine gun fire combined with the artillery he directed eliminated many more. More importantly, he had stopped a German counterattack that could have annihilated Company B and potentially led to a breakthrough in the American lines. His solitary position gave time for reinforcements to arrive. Strengthened by replacements, the 3rd Battalion, 30th Infantry Regiment captured Holtzwihr on January 27th. The Germans, discouraged by their lack of progress against the Americans, withdrew most of their men and equipment from the area. Except for small pockets of enemy resistance, the areas east of the Ill River and north of the Colmar Canal were free of enemy forces until January 28th. The Colmar pocket was gradually eliminated. The threat had passed. Audie Murphy was promoted to 1st Lieutenant on February 16th. The 3rd Infantry Division was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for its actions in the Colmar pocket, giving Murphy a bronze oak leaf cluster for its emblem. But the greatest honor was yet to come. Brigadier General Ralph B. Lovett and Lieutenant Colonel Hallett D. Edson recommended Murphy for the Medal of Honor for his actions at Holtzwihr. The award was confirmed by an official press release on May 24, 1945. On June 2nd, near Salzburg, Austria, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch presented Murphy with both the Medal of Honor and the Legion of Merit. The official citation read in part, "For an hour, the Germans tried every weapon available to eliminate Lieutenant Murphy, but he continued to hold his position. His artillery fire direction eliminated many of the enemy. He killed or wounded about 50. Lieutenant Murphy's indomitable courage and his refusal to yield an inch of ground saved his company from possible encirclement and destruction, and allowed it to hold the woods, which had been the enemy's objective." Audie was only 19 years old, and he was now recognized as the most decorated American soldier of World War II. When World War II ended in May 1945, Audie Murphy had served in 9 combat campaigns: Tunisia, Sicily, Naples, Foggia, Anzio, Rome, Arno, southern France, Ardennes, Alsace, Rhineland, and Central Europe. He was credited with destroying 6 tanks, as well as killing over 240 German soldiers and wounding and capturing many others. By the time the war ended, he had become a legend within the 3rd Infantry Division. His principal U.S. decorations included the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device, and 3 Purple Hearts. He also received decorations from France and Belgium for heroism. In total, Audie received 33 awards and medals, making him the most highly decorated soldier not only of World War II, but possibly in American military history. On July 16, 1945, Audie appeared on the cover of Life magazine, wearing his Medal of Honor. The article described him as the most decorated American soldier of World War II. Audie Murphy became a household name throughout America. When asked years later why he had grabbed the machine gun and faced an entire company of German infantry, Murphy replied simply, "They were killing my friends." It wasn't about glory. It wasn't about medals. It was about the men by his side. But behind the medals and headlines, Audie was fighting battles that no one could see. He returned to the United States as a war hero, but he was deeply affected by his experiences. He suffered from what was then called battle fatigue or shell shock, what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. Audie had constant nightmares. He suffered from insomnia. He slept with a loaded pistol beside his bed. Any loud noise would send him diving for cover. Later in life, Audie became an advocate for veterans suffering from PTSD. In an effort to draw attention to the problems of veterans returning from the Korean and Vietnam Wars, Murphy spoke candidly about his own struggles with war-related mental health conditions. After the war, they took dogs from the Army and rehabilitated them for civilian life, Audie said. But they turned soldiers into civilians immediately and let them sink or swim. He petitioned the U.S. government to extend health benefits to address PTSD and other mental health problems suffered by returning war veterans. As a result of legislation introduced by U.S. Congressman Olin Teague 5 months after Murphy's death in 1971, the VA Audie L. Murphy Memorial Hospital in San Antonio was dedicated in 1973. But in 1945, returning from the war, Audie was simply trying to figure out how to live again. Actor James Cagney had seen Audie's photo on the cover of Life magazine. Impressed, Cagney invited the young war hero to Hollywood. Audie hesitated. He had no acting training. He had a strong Texas accent, and he was dealing with his war traumas. But friends convinced him to accept Cagney's offer. Perhaps a new life in Hollywood could help him leave the war behind. Audie stayed in a guest house on the Cagney's estate for over a year while he recovered his health and took acting lessons. Slowly, very slowly, he began to adjust to civilian life. But the war never completely left him, and he would carry those scars for the rest of his life. Audie Murphy's acting career didn't happen overnight. Although she had speaking roles in her first 2 films, Beyond Glory in Texas, Brooklyn, and Heaven, her roles were minor and her appearances brief. Audie struggled to break into leading roles. Hollywood was a foreign land for this unsophisticated and weary young man from Texas. He doubted both his own ability and his taste for a career on screen. His 3rd film, Bad Boy, in 1949, became his first leading role. After returning from World War II, Murphy bought a house in Farmersville, Texas, for his older sister Corinne, her husband Poland Burns, and their 3 children. As promised, Audie recovered his 3 younger siblings, Nadine, Billy, and Joe, who had been living in an orphanage since their mother's death. He reunited them with the family. Audie always kept his promises. On April 24, 1951, Audie married Pamela Archer, a former Braniff Airlines flight attendant who had become an Army nurse. They moved to the San Fernando Valley in California and had 2 sons, Terrence Michael Terry Murphy, born in 1952, and James Shannon Skipper Murphy, born in 1954. The boys were named after 2 of Audie's most respected friends, Terry Hunt and James Skipper Cherry. Audie's film career took off when Universal International Pictures signed him to a long-term contract. The kid from Texas launched his fortune to its current height. In 1955, Audie starred in the film version of his autobiography, To Hell and Back. He played himself, reliving his wartime experiences on camera. The film was a huge success, setting a box office record for Universal that wasn't broken for 20 years until it was finally surpassed by Jaws in 1975. Audie also became known for his westerns. The genre suited his laid-back image and Texan accent. Between 1948 and 1969, he appeared in 50 films and television series. In 1955, the country's exhibitors named him the most popular Western movie star of the year. But even with his Hollywood success, Audie never forgot his roots or his service. After returning from World War II in 1945, Audie joined the 36th Infantry Division of the Texas National Guard. He continued to serve in that capacity and eventually achieved the rank of major before retiring. Audie also became a breeder and owner of thoroughbred horses. He owned several ranches in Texas, Arizona, and California, combining his love of horses with his Texan heritage. He also wrote poetry. Few know that Audie was a sensitive poet. One of his poems, The Crosses Grow on Anzio, appears in To Hell and Back, attributed to a soldier named Kerrigan. Only 2 others have survived. Alone and far removed, and freedom flies in your heart like an eagle. Through his friend Guy Mitchell, Murphy was introduced to composer Scott Turner in 1961. The two collaborated on numerous songs between 1962 and 1970, the most successful being Shutters and Boards and When the Wind Blows in Chicago. In 1955, Murphy became interested in Freemasonry. He was encouraged by his close friend, Texas theater owner Skipper Cherry, to petition and join the Masonic Order in California. He returned to Texas to become a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason and join the Shriners. Audie was active in various Masonic events and was a member in good standing for the rest of his life. But despite his outward success, Audie continued to struggle with his inner demons. The memories of the war never left him, and eventually this struggle would have tragic consequences. May 28, 1971. A cloudy day in the Virginia mountains. Audie Murphy, now 45, was flying in a private Aero Commander 680 aircraft from Atlanta to Martinsville, Virginia, for a business meeting. There were 5 other people on board, including the pilot. Poor weather conditions and dense fog made navigation difficult. The pilot was flying by instruments through the mountains. At 4:30 p.m., the plane crashed into Brush Mountain near Catawba, Virginia. There were no survivors. Audie Murphy died instantly. The news shocked the nation. America's most decorated war hero had died not in combat, but in a peacetime plane crash. Audie was buried in Arlington National Cemetery on June 7, 1971, with full military honors. His grave is located in Section 46, Special Plot S366A, and is visited by more people than any other grave in Arlington except that of John F. Kennedy. His simple grave marker lists all his military decorations, but it doesn't capture the man's true legacy. Audie Murphy proved that heroes can come from the most unlikely places. A poor sharecropper boy from Texas, orphaned at 16, who barely made it into the Army because of his size, and yet became the most decorated soldier in American history. He proved that courage has nothing to do with physical size. Audie was only 1.65 millimeters tall and weighed 50 kilos, but he had the heart of a giant. He proved that true heroes don't seek glory. When asked why he risked his life atop that burning tank, Audie didn't speak of duty or honor. He simply said, "They were killing my friends." And perhaps most importantly, Audie Murphy helped break the stigma surrounding war-related mental health conditions. By speaking openly about his own struggle with PTSD, he paved the way for countless veterans to receive the help they needed. The VA Memorial Audie L. Murphy Hospital in San Antonio continues to serve veterans to this day. Sergeant Audie Murphy clubs on military bases honor non-commissioned officers who exemplify his character. The Audie Murphy American Cotton Museum in Greenville, Texas, preserves much of his memory. His memoir and film To Hell and Back remain powerful, not because they glorify war, but because they show the cost and the humanity, the fear, the pain, the duty. The Smithsonian National Museum of American History presents Murphy's Medal of Honor citation as part of its exhibit, The Price of Freedom: Americans at War. The Audie Murphy Research Foundation, founded by Murphy's eldest son, collects, preserves, and shares historical information about Murphy's life and career. But perhaps Audie's greatest legacy is simply this: he reminded us that an ordinary person facing extraordinary circumstances can do extraordinary things. He showed us that courage is not the absence of fear, it's acting despite fear. He taught us that true heroes fight not for glory or recognition, but for the men and women by their side. And he proved that no matter how humble your beginnings, no matter how impossible the odds seem, you can make a difference. Everyone expected Audie Murphy to die within 5 minutes atop that burning tank. But he survived long enough to change the outcome of a battle, inspire a nation, and leave a legacy that endures to this day. The poor sharecropper boy from Kingston, Texas, became a legend, and his story will continue to inspire future generations. This was the story of Audie Leon Murphy, America's most decorated soldier, and the day one man stopped an army.